quickly. Settle down.
The free men of the world are marching together to victory.
It was the most ambitious, daring, complicated and absolutely necessary operation of the Second World War. And when 75 years later you walk these beaches, you feel a sense of gravity that something of immense importance happened here. The success or failure of this event would decide whether Europe and possibly the rest of the world would live under fascism or forge their own destinies as free democratic countries. I've always been fascinated by the Normandy stories. With the numbers and logistics involved, it was something that had never been attempted before. This is a unique moment in history. And as part of this special 75th anniversary program, we've travelled thousands of miles to bring you stories, new and old, from these exceptional times. And I'm going to take you with me on our journey as we travel in the footsteps of heroes who 75 years ago helped liberate the Western world. We rediscover the forgotten embarkation ports, the camps and airfields in England. The very spot where some of the first men and machines took off for the invasion of Europe. We fly in the same aircraft that led the airborne invasion. We travel in the vehicles and the boats that these veterans fought from, cross the English Channel to the invasion beaches, and push inland through the Normandy battlefields and hedgerows to look at this world-changing conflict in a new light. Along the way, we reveal some long-kept secrets and uncover some painful truths.
Casualty figures that this place was still causing over those days when it should have been knocked out on the sick.
Some of those veterans tell their story.
I always jump number one. About 195 days of combat.
As they now gather for what may be the last call to Normandy.
When they opened that gate, we knew that that was war, and that's what you were going to do there.
I was attached to the 4th Division.
We bring these memories to life and revisit this unique moment in time, because to forget would be to lose one of the most important episodes of world history and to lose a vital part of ourselves. So come with us in this engaging documentary series as we take a fresh look at the D-Day Normandy landings. It is living history at its very best. D-Day was not just one day, nor one strip of sand. It was the culmination of years of build-up, planning, innovation, trial and grievous error in response to Nazi Germany's brutal conquering of Europe. And to understand why D-Day has become the international focal point that it is, we have to look back through the years prior to 1944. During the 1930s, Hitler had risen to supreme power in Germany, broken the Treaty of Versailles and built up a powerful army and air force, which he unleashed against poorly prepared neighbouring countries in Europe. In a matter of months, his army had conquered many of the sovereign states of the continent. Sweeping aside outmoded defences, his generals implemented blitzkrieg tactics with fast-moving columns of tanks, supported by the tactical use of aircraft. Poland, Belgium, Czechoslovakia, Norway, Austria, the Netherlands, all were defeated quickly or surrendered ignominiously. The British Expeditionary Force was sent over to France to help her allies, but was ill prepared for the blitzkrieg method of warfare and sorely defeated. Pushed back to the English Channel, over 300,000 British troops and 30,000 French were evacuated from the beaches in northern France, in what was later referred to as the Miracle of Dunkirk. After just over 6 weeks, the formidable French army was outflanked and surrendered. Most of the continent of Europe and even North Africa was in Nazi German hands. The light of freedom was close to being snuffed out. Britain stood alone, defying the Third Reich by defeating the Luftwaffe in the Battle of Britain, denying Hitler's armies air cover they needed to cross the Channel.
Finest dumping ground in the world, and might well become known as Goering's graveyard.
And the dumps are made up of Heinkel's, Dorniers, Junkers and Messerschmitts.
It was left to Goering's bombers to flatten Britain's industrial cities, and to Admiral Donitz's U-boat wolf packs in the Atlantic to sink the convoys from the USA and other parts of the world, carrying food and supplies to help keep the island fighting and surviving. At one point during these dark days, government officials estimated that Great Britain had only 3 weeks of fuel and supplies left for its people. These were perilous times for Britain. Her fate and that of Europe and freedom hung in the balance. In December of that year, the surprise attack by the Japanese at Pearl Harbor threw America into the war.
We will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us.
When Pearl Harbor was attacked, I mean, that was one of the worst things that ever happened to me. Knowing that something happened like that to my country, you know. I figured when I was old enough, if I could help my country fight the war, and so that's when I enlisted, and I figured the Army would be good enough for me.
On the day that will live in infamy, Hitler quickly declared war on the United States. America retaliated by declaring war on Japan and Germany. Japan's General Yamamoto said that he feared he had awoken a sleeping giant. When Britain's Prime Minister Winston Churchill got news of the attack and declaration of war, he knew that the defeat of Nazi Germany was inevitable. From a pre-war army of 179,000 men, the arsenal of democracy began to go up the gears.
Experiencing life outside of the home and immediate family for perhaps the first time, these women discover a special kind of camaraderie with their fellow workers who come from many different backgrounds. They feel satisfaction from a job well done and pride at its completion.
To get another perspective on this, we arranged to meet up with the esteemed broadcaster, author and historian, James Holland, in Normandy at Utah Beach. By the time James and I got ourselves organised, everything in position, ready for filming, it was starting to get a little bit filled up. So we adjourned to a bunker. Where else? I asked James about America's position at the outbreak of World War II.
The Second World War had a massive impact on the United States of America. One has to remember that before the war it was isolationist, it had almost no armed forces at all, a half-decent navy, but that was about it, almost no fighter planes, a tiny army that was languishing 19th in the world, sandwiched between Portugal and Uruguay.
All of us were poor, very dirt poor, but everybody was poor, so you know, there's no shame. And of course at Pearl Harbor we looked around for the Air Force and or the Air Corps and the Navy and stuff, and we didn't have one. So our readiness posture was just anemic. It just wasn't there.
American aircraft and tank design still had a long way to go. Based on Great War practices, the role of the tank in the USA was defined by the General Staff as being able to facilitate the uninterrupted advance of the rifleman in attack.
And yet, by the end of the war, 1945, it was the greatest armed power in the world, bar none. It moved from being a country of modernity and commercialism to being a superpower, and it is a status that it hasn't relinquished ever since.
A good example of this was when we were filming C-47s further up the coast in Cherbourg. When you get all the reenactors here and the round canopy parachute guys going through their drills, doing everything as they would have done in the 1940s, or as near as damning. Suddenly, out of the blue, comes the latest high technology from the United States. The US Marine Corps in their Ospreys. And I can hereby certify that they are very, very bloody loud. The machines, not the Marines, they're nice. You have to say that. Today we take our freedom for granted. The ability to, within reason, say and do what we want. Make fun of our leaders, marry whomsoever we want, and believe in what we want. Freedom was not on the Nazi Party agenda. Any deviation from what was deemed the official National Socialist line was treated as a crime and punished harshly. The crimes could be homosexuality, being Jewish, a disaffected artist, public criticism of the party, being Polish, a gypsy, physically or mentally disabled, unable to prove your ancestral bloodline. All of these and more could ensure a one-way ticket to the concentration camps.
Obviously, the Germans were carrying out the Holocaust from kind of 1942 onwards. The death camps had been set up. How much the Allies knew about that, how much that was an imperative, is not entirely clear.
There was also the mainly civilian Todd organisation, which built many of the war structures for the Third Reich. The government and military chose able-bodied enemies of the state to work on construction of the buildings and fortifications of the Third Reich. It was slave labour of the harshest kind. I came across an example of this recently near the River Weser in northern Germany. Around here was one of the heartlands of Nazi Germany's industrial might. The shipyards, the U-boat pens. A small monument in a park where a rough concrete structure had been placed. Russians, Poles, Belgians, French, Slavs, all from areas conquered by the Germans. They had their names on this rather coarse edifice. Out of curiosity, I followed the signs to the Valentine bunker. I feel that where we're going may be quite a little darker. This huge building towered menacingly over the skyline. That's when the relevance of the monument in the park made sense. The plaques were to commemorate some of those who died in the special camps for the construction of this monstrous building.
Oh, for goodness sake, this is big.
And the relevance of this site is not only the inhuman treatment of forced labour, it was the fact that here, one killer U-boat would be launched into the North Sea and the Atlantic every 56 hours to wreak havoc with the Allied supply lines across the Atlantic.
Over 1 million tons of American shipping was destroyed before a single U-boat was sunk.
If they'd have been built in time, the Allied landings in Normandy and the success of the invasion would have been very, very uncertain. Of the 8,000 or so employed in grueling conditions to build this place, 1,800 so far have been known to have died. 2 mass graves and 1 cemetery are located nearby. There are more mass graves yet to be excavated. In fact, not one submarine was actually built. The brutality, the lives lost, the resources produced nothing. In March 1945, RAF Lancasters from 617 Squadron dropped 2 Grand Slam bombs through the 4.5 metre thick concrete roof. The Valentine bunker was finished. Most chilling for me were the sentiments expressed by the project's chief engineer. There was not a mention of the hundreds of lives it took in its construction. Those people did not matter. And this was just one place and one example where human life was taken so lightly because it did not fit state policies. Elena Nawabilska takes us through another example in Poland.
14th of June 1940, 728 men were taken into Auschwitz. And that was the beginning of the whole death, murder, and absolute and total hell for the next 5 years.
Information and practical evidence of more new wonder weapons, much espoused by Hitler, was coming into effect. The V-1 flying bomb had caused much damage to London and southern England. The new V2, the world's first ICBM, was a real threat to the UK and in the future to the USA, as were the new rocket and jet-propelled aircraft. Capture of these launch and development sites became imperative.
V2s killed or injured more than 9,000 people in London, East Anglia and the southern counties.
It was still absolutely essential that the Allies make a continental invasion and start the liberation of Europe. What are the alternatives? Well, first of all, the Red Army would sweep further west. Secondly, the war would have dragged on. Thirdly, it would have probably gone nuclear, because you have to remember that that nuclear bomb, that atomic bomb that was dropped on Japan, was originally designed for Germany. And had that been dropped on Europe, that would have created a very, very different world afterwards.
The special relationship between the USA and the British Empire brought them together as coalition allies. Working with the powerful Russian armies on the Eastern Front, the two last great bastions of freedom and democracy resolved that they had to deal with Germany first, then Japan. And to do that, they needed a foothold in Fortress Europe. Plans long in the making were brought to bear for the greatest sea and airborne invasion of all time. Stalin, Roosevelt and Churchill had to decide where and when and how to land their armies. There had already been hard lessons learned by the British in Norway and Dieppe. Finding the right place and means to put ashore the required number of troops depended on many factors.
With the numbers and logistics, it was something that had never ever been attempted before, and it was something that never happened again. This is a unique moment in history.
An operation of this magnitude to defeat the well-entrenched armies of the Third Reich, break through Hitler's Atlantic Wall, take the attack to the enemy and push him back to his homeland, was fraught with difficulties. The transatlantic convoys bringing troops, vehicles, aircraft and supplies from the USA and parts of the British Empire had to be kept open and safe from deadly strikes by German U-boats. If supplies were not increased and safe, then the build-up and timescale of the operation would be too long and costly. This was a technical race that the Allies could ill afford to lose. In early February 1943, Dick Swanson was a young gun captain on one of the US Coast Guard escort ships, protecting a transatlantic convoy, in the midst of which was the SS Dorchester, with almost 1,000 US troops on board, bound for England, where they would train for the Normandy invasion.
I didn't want to be inside on the bridge during action or general quarters, so I asked to be on one of the guns, and I was a gun captain on the 20 millimeter on one of the bridges. Sweep the ocean to check for submarines. That was the main thing. I remember the seas were real bad. They were real heavy. We had 6 to 8 foot waves, and we were having a time just to keep up with the convoy. But it was probably one of the worst convoys that we had. We had a man way up in the bow, and he reported a torpedo, and then we looked out and we could see the trail of it. And then we also heard it when it hit.
The Dorchester was hit and quickly began to sink.
Our first orders was to search for the sub, and we started doing that. But then we came upon these lifeboats or rafts with these guys, and we just couldn't leave them. So our commanding officer actually he disobeyed orders, you might say. He stopped and we picked up the survivors. We didn't find any alive that were in the ocean.
Knowing what the enemy was doing, where his forces were located, and when he would strike was vital in the air, on land and at sea. Technological innovation was also required at many levels to bring the Americans and the British up to scratch for modern-day warfare.
To create something which is logistically absolutely mind-numbing, and you have to remember that this is all happening in a time where there are no satellites, no internet, no email, no GPS. It is a phenomenal achievement.
Bringing three superpowers together, with their different social and military cultures, and capabilities was a gargantuan diplomatic, political and military affair. Inter-service rivalry meant it was difficult enough to get the armed forces of one nation to synchronise and interact effectively with one another.
The Allies are thinking big war. This is tri-service war. This is war in the air, war on land, war at sea.
This, coupled with the massive egos of military figures like Montgomery, Patton, de Gaulle, LeMay and Tedder, and others, was guaranteed to bring tensions and instability into the alliance. The actual location of the invasion presented the planners with a multitude of problems.
If you go across at the Pas-de-Calais, which is the shortest stretch of the channel, that is also the bit of the Atlantic wall, the defences on the continental coast, which are the strongest. You've got the Dutch coast and the Danish coast and got lots of low-lying areas and flooded areas, and further than that you've got around the Seine estuary, which is a possibility, and then of course you've got the Normandy coastline. Because you've got all the beaches you could possibly want to land there. There's no major port that the Allies could use, but it's a place where you can use air power and achieve what you need to achieve.
Crossing the capricious English Channel, unseen by the enemy, landing men and machines in the numbers necessary to attack the enemy's shore, meant that new tactics, systems, devices and machines had to be built, tried and tested. Hitler's Atlantic wall stretched from Norway to the west coast of France, with varying degrees of effectiveness. The large guns and bunkers looked impressive, as they were designed to, but they did not cover every possible landing ground and were not always manned by the best troops. Many of the batteries along the coast were actually cleverly sited so they fired along the coastline, so that when the Allies came towards the shore, hit the beach, they were enfilade firing. They were hitting them from the side. Not only were the bunkers, guns and mines deadly, the massed array of low water obstacles would inflict casualties on men and machines alike. This is a Belgian gate. It's meant to wreck landing craft. It's very intricate and it's also very bloody solid. You can see they could have done a very good job. Once ashore, it was obviously important to get as many troops and machines to follow up and push the enemy further back as the element of surprise wore off and resistance stiffened. This meant freedom of movement, roads, communications and space to bring in more forces to bear on the enemy. It was a logistics nightmare. Gasoline, food, ammunition. The Allies had to capture a port to maintain momentum. Cherbourg was the main opportunity, and the Americans were given this task, but taking it and restoring it to operational capacity would take time.
Which side can build up material quickest? Will it be the Germans who are already on the landmass, or will it be the Allies who've got to transport it from across the sea?
This was one of the German army's strongest features. The ability to take on a major assault, then retreat to prepared positions, regroup and counterattack with devastating force. It was not just one day or one shoreline. As once the Allies had broken through the Atlantic Wall, they would have to deal with highly mobile German panzer divisions to win the Battle of Normandy. How and where to break out from the beachhead into Normandy and then spread east to Germany offered many options, but they all depended on smashing the enemy defences and getting ashore quickly with as many men, machines and supplies as possible. The planners and organisers of the largest sea and airborne invasion in history got down to work.
It was here on the beach in Normandy that the first phase of the Allied campaign to liberate Europe could be won or lost.
And on D-Day, they just had to get it right.